Hello there folks, back again for another video. In this one I wanted to dive into a game and tell you a little bit about a miniatures range and a company that I think is absolutely fantastic and is one that you shouldn't really be missing out on if you in any way like the idea of fantasy wargaming and skirmish games and campaign games of the ilk of Mordheim and stuff like that from the past. So Oathsworn Miniatures, the site that we're looking at here, they have done a whole bunch of different miniatures over the last while. They have done female dungeon delving adventurers. There was a stint of sort of like mythological gods, so they've done like sculpting for Odin and all sorts of different things. But the main game that has kind of won them acclaim has been Burrows and Badgers, which you can see lovingly shown off here. So Burrows and Badgers is a skirmish style game where you dive into playing with maybe between 5 and 10 miniatures per side perhaps, and as you dive in and play through the game you sort of develop your gang over time, you gain experience, and the deeper you go into the game the more you unlock in terms of stories and narrative and additional characters for your warbands, and you increase the abilities that they might have and their special actions they can do, the magical weapons they can find, and everything else in between. One of the interesting things about Burrows and Badgers though is that while it has definitely got almost like a Redwall feel to it, I think a lot of people equate it almost with kind of sort of whimsical fantasy, which I think you can definitely go down that route with the game, and it makes it really good for new players, especially younger players as well. But I think there's also a slight edge to the game as well, and if you dive into things like their narrative campaigns and everything like that, Burrows and Badgers definitely has a little bit more of a grim touch to it, especially when you look at some of the miniatures that they do for the range, which we will dive into a little bit more later on. Now, what you're looking at here is the first sort of entry points that you can dive into for the game. So you do have access to a hardback rulebook. A little bit more on that later actually, but there is access to a hardback rulebook that was published by Osprey Games some years ago now. You can still buy that if you want, so you can still pick it up and start playing games. I will say that there is going to be a new edition of the game coming out sometime next year, possibly around the month of Salute, so April. But until that point, there's no reason not to dive in and pick up the original first edition hardback book, give that a read, and dive into the game and start playing it. And of course, you get a little awesome mouse with it as well, which is nice. Oathsworn also do a couple of starter warbands to kind of get you going in the game. So you have starter warband A, as you can see here, which contains an adder mage, a squirrel witch, a mouse shield maiden, a weasel soldier, a hare knight, and a mouse knight, alongside your poly dice set, which is what you'll be using for all of your dice rolling. And they also have starter bundle B, as you can see here, which comes with, and you can see the miniatures there, the Shrew Zerker, the Sparrow Warrior, the Rabbit Archer, the Mouse Nun, the Otter Pirate, and the Squirrel Ranger. And once again, you get the polyhedral dice. What's quite nice actually about the Burrows and Badgers range as a whole is that for the majority of the range, they are all just one-piece metal miniatures, sorry. So you get them, you stick them into the base, and away you go. On rare occasions, you will find miniatures that are slightly bigger. So if we dive in and just search for bear, for example, the Great Cave Bear, as you can see here, currently out of stock. But this miniature is a multi-part resin miniature. It was done as a special one for Salute. And as you can see, rather nice. You will also find that some of the larger miniatures might end up being resins as well. So for example, this fellow here I believe is a resin miniature. Yeah, so he's a big resin miniature that came out as part of one of their recent Kickstarters, or not recent, but a reasonably recent Kickstarter. But for the majority, all of the miniatures that you're going to be getting for the range are all just single-piece metal or resin miniatures, which makes them absolutely fantastic for painting. One of the things I would note about the range as a whole is that I think it's really forgiving for painters. One of the things that I think is really nice about the collection is, and the miniatures that they do, is that everything is so incredibly well defined on the miniatures. So you see really easily where cloaks end, where armor begins, where skin and fur pops up, and all the detail is worked into things like the shields and stuff as well, as you can see on those Mouse Knight. The other thing that's really nice, so obviously that makes it really good for newcomers to painting, because you've got some very easy established ways of working rather than having to guess what part of the miniature is what, etc. I also think what's really nice about it is that it's a great game for people who are afraid of painting, skin, as it were. Because one of the nice things about this is that all of the characters that you get in this game are furry, so you essentially just have to dry brush the heck out of these things, give them a little bit of a wash, and you will pretty much have a fantastic looking miniature without too much extra effort. Just go in and do the sort of black eyes or whatever, and away you go, really. The other thing I really like about it is that you can also use reference images quite a lot with this range. So if you want to know how to paint a kingfisher, well, then you go and find a picture of a kingfisher and you use that as your reference images, and you can dive in and make it look, hopefully, as nice as this studio painted one, which is very cool. But yeah, so they have a really nice, extensive selection of different miniatures for you to choose from. As we look here, there's 19 pages of miniatures for you to pick up and dive into. I mean, my favourite are the Badgers. I really like the Badgers, although I do also like the Red Kite. Let's get the Red Kite up, actually, and go back through here, see if we can find. Yeah, there we go. Couple of my most recent favourite miniatures. So you've got the Red Kite there, really awesome miniature, and then the Badger Ranger, who's just super cool, leaning over his massive longbow or a great bow, maybe, I suppose. But when you dive into the game, one of the nice things is that you can do sort of like a multi-species warband, as you can see here. So you can have lots of different animals from various species, as we say. So you can have birds, you can have rodents, you can have otters, badgers, everything, blah blah blah. Or you can do single species warbands. So if you wanted to do a warband of just entirely badgers, you could do, which I think is quite nice. I can't remember if that's actually being changed in the new edition of the rules, but I'm sure we'll find out about that a little bit more next year. But yeah, as well as the miniatures, as you see there, they also have a whole host of different supplements and things. So you can buy objective markers and stuff, which are kind of handy for the game. I'm always a fan of the Northumbrian pennies, because they're really good for showing activations on the tabletop, because each model has an activation and it goes back and forth between the two warbands. They also do a series of supplements and sort of magazines as well that you can get your hands on. A lot of these are available digitally. The journals and things are available digitally, but things like the Dillendorf Agreement and the Warren Percy Affair are, I believe they're physical only, but they give you sort of like bonus content for you to dive into. So these were self-published by Oathsworn, so they weren't done through Osprey, but they kind of give you like an extra storyline for you to follow through with your warbands, which I think is really nice. So you've got like a map-based campaign as part of the Dillendorf Agreement, and then the Warren Percy Affair is a slightly more self-contained, compact set of rules and scenarios for the game. And what's also quite nice is that through the use of the Oathsworn Journal, Michael's gone through and he has kind of updated the warbands and the gangs and the different profiles and things. So where he's felt that additional content needs to be added in, or new warbands need to be used with additional rules, they've been sort of added into the mix as part of these journals, and you'll be able to find a whole host of those to get your hands on. And there you go. We also sell PDF versions, not the physical books, if you want them. So you just contact Oathsworn in order to get those, which is quite nice. So yeah, there's quite a lot for you to dive into with Burrows and Badgers. I think the miniatures line as a whole is just fantastic. It's always nice seeing people painting up the miniatures and showing what they can do. I think they are miniatures that immediately pop as soon as you get paint on them. And it's always fascinating seeing what people do with the paint schemes and stuff and where they take them. And as I said, it's been really interesting when you get to see sort of like younger people getting involved with Burrows and Badgers and painting up miniatures for their first warbands and stuff, and then diving in to play the game. The actual mechanics of Burrows and Badgers are fairly nice and easy for you to get stuck into as well. It's a simple poly system where you roll dice based on your stat, so you might have a d4 or a d6, etc. in a stat, and when you roll that dice, you then compare the result against your opponent. So say you rolled a d8 against a d6, and you rolled a 7, for example, and they rolled a 4, then the difference is the damage that you do to the enemy. So it's nice and simple, minus armor and things like that. And the same goes for shooting. Where the twist comes in is in the different equipment and stuff that you can give to the various creatures in your warband, but you can also do some really interesting things mechanically with sort of like the kind of, I guess you'd call it like a crit system almost. So when you roll the highest number on your dice when playing a game of Burrows and Badgers, so say you rolled an 8, for example, on that test we were just doing, you then get to just add 7 to that roll. So it's a really good way to sort of like boost up a dice roll and give you the edge against your opponent. It also means that smaller, less strong, weaker creatures, for example, a mouse, has more chance of rolling that crit almost and rolling that 4 on a d4, for example, which will then add 7 to the roll. As opposed to like a badger who's rolling a d10, it's less likely for them to roll. So you can have those really nice moments of sort of small heroics in the game, which I think is always good to see in a game like this, because you can throw out some interesting scenarios. I've played plenty of games where things have gone very awry, and I've had no way to get out of the fact that there's a murderous mouse chasing me across the tabletop. But yeah, it's a really fun little set of rules and a fantastic little game for you to dive into and play. As I say, it's fantastic as a campaign, but I've also played it, competitively. Put that in quotation marks, but I've played it competitively at a couple of tournaments in the past before the dark years of the pandemic. And it was absolutely fantastic diving into that game over the course of a day and just playing loads and loads of fun games with different scenarios against different people and trying to create an interesting warband that had lots of nuance to it, which I thought was quite cool. As I say, the new edition is going to be coming down the pipeline though next year, and as part of that there's also going to be a new suite of miniatures, so I just wanted to show those off here. So here's just a few of the miniatures that Oathsworn have been working on for the new starter set. So you have a whole host of brand new single piece metal miniatures that are going to be coming your way, and the way that they've kind of themed it is that all of the miniatures that you get as part of these 2 new starter warbands, so you're going to have one for the Royalists and one for the Rogues, who are 2 of the factions you can play as in the game. They're all going to be WYSIWYG, so what you see is what you get. So anything that you see on the miniatures is what the particular figure is armed with. So this fox will come with sort of like a matchlock arquebusere, etc., or rifle, alongside sort of like equipment pouch and stuff, and then they'll also have a sword for you to play with as well. And the same goes for things like casters. So this will be like sort of like a magic user or a priest with a talisman and things, and their little gnarled staff. And it'll all equate to quick and easy out-of-the-box warbands that you can just start playing the game with. So even somebody like me, who already has access to a whole bunch of Burrows and Badgers miniatures, I'm probably going to end up buying those starter bundles anyway, just so I can have some of the new miniatures, of course, but also so I can start playing some new games in the new edition without having to do any of the kind of like background reading and bookkeeping, as it were, for my games. But yeah, as you can see, the miniatures are just looking absolutely fantastic. And again, noting that sort of like sense of definition that you get in the miniatures. So when you're painting something like this model here, you know clearly where the trousers end and the sort of the tunic begins, and the separation between the belt in it as well, and also the hood and all that stuff as well. So, you know, dive in and start painting these at your leisure, and you'll get them painted very, very quickly and very, very nicely. Especially with that, as I say, that dry brushing in the fur, it makes all the difference. So yeah, this is just a few of the miniatures that they're working on, and it's nice to see that it's multi-species, so you get a whole host of different types of creatures in there, and also you get different creatures that bring different rules to the tabletop. So you have your kind of standard on-foot creatures, but you're also going to get the likes of an owl and stuff in there as well, so you're going to learn about flying and things in the game. Not that it's too difficult anyway, at least in first edition regardless, but yeah. as I say, some really nice stuff coming down the pipeline for Burrows and Badgers and the new edition of the game. Definitely make sure to go and check them out on social media to find out more and see how the game is progressing and how it's developing. There are some second edition playtest rules floating around on the internet in the Facebook group. They're going through the refining step at the moment. So if you are interested in that, make sure to go and check it out. I haven't looked at it in maybe a couple of months or so, but it'd been fun to dive into it, maybe have a look at what's been sort of added and changed. I know one of the nice things is that I think Michael has tried to add in as much of the stuff that he could from the journals and stuff, so that you've got things like Witch Hunter Warbands joining in alongside the classic Royalists and the Rogues, and those from Up in the Wilds and everything else in between. But yeah, it's a great little game, and I realised that I have not necessarily talked about it as much as I probably should have done, because it was one of those games that really got me back into the hobby and got my painting mojo back, which is always a good thing. If you are interested in diving into the game and playing the first edition of it, then I would recommend coming over and checking out my blog, Because of Dragons, where you can go and check out this guide to building your first warband and what kind of miniatures you might want to add into the mix when doing so. The hard and fast rule is that you can just do whatever you want, really. But if you want to do themes and all that kind of thing, I break down kind of like how to do that and sort of embracing the narrative and the fluff for the game, and where you want to take it as part of a campaign, really. So pick the miniatures you like and then go from there, to be honest. But yeah, this is just a quick look at how to build your first warband. So if you are interested in the sort of like rules of that, make sure to go and check that out over on my blog. I also wanted to direct you to the folks at Sissa. So Sissa Precision do MDF terrain, and back during the sort of like middle period of the first edition of the game, they worked with Oathsworn to create a series of terrain pieces that you can use for building your tabletops. So you can get yourself the whole Warren Percy style town set, which is linked to the campaign that we just looked at, or you can get smaller things like the Burrows and Badgers set here, which comes with one of the large buildings alongside a few of the smaller ones. So if you're interested in getting your hands on these, you can go and check them out over at Sissa, and I'm sure you'll be able to get them at things like Salute and stuff as well. But they do a whole host of little tiny buildings and some of the larger ones as well. I actually think I have a couple of these terrain pieces somewhere in a box that I never got around to building, but I desperately need to do that at some point because they are really, really nice kits. Just obviously be aware they are resin, so not resin, they're MDF. So when you dive in and get your hands on these, you want to use PVA glue, etc., or super glue or whatever, and then get some paint on them, and away you go, really. But yeah, they're really nice little kits, as you can see there, and definitely worth checking out if you want to build up an interesting tabletop for games of Burrows and Badgers. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of enlighten you to the awesomeness that was Burrows and Badgers, really, and Oathsworn Miniatures. And if you've never checked it out before, maybe go and have a look yourself. As I say, the current rulebook is available for you to go and download and buy and check out for yourself, which is a glorious little tome and very easy to read. And from there you can play some really fun skirmish games, campaign games with your friends and family, and then from there keep an eye out for that second edition and those glorious new miniatures, as you can see here, which is going to be ending up on tabletops next year, hopefully around the time of Salute. Let me know what you think in the comments down below about Burrows and Badgers. Do you like the sound of the game? Are you a fan of the likes of Redwall and stuff? And would you like to dive in and give this game a go? Would you like more information on the game itself and the rules? Is that something you'd be interested in? Please let me know if you want more information on that. But yeah, just a little sort of like teaser, taster, eye-opener maybe to another fantasy skirmish game that I think deserves to be on people's minds as they're thinking about stepping out of the shadow of the likes of Games Workshop and Warhammer. But yeah, definitely have a look at this and see what you think. I am going to go back to browsing these gorgeous miniatures that are coming our way next year. I have lots of painting to do. I still have an entire Kickstarter that needs painting. Oh my god, that's going to be terrifying, but there we go. But yes, this is all on the horizon for Burrows and Badgers. Make sure to come and check out all the links down below for Oathsworn and Burrows and Badgers so you can get your hands on the miniatures and the rulebooks Tell me your thoughts in the comments down below, and I'm going to stop waffling and move on to dive into another video. Like, share, subscribe, do all that good stuff, and I will be back in the near future with another video. Bye for now.